You're watching Raj News coming out of Nigeria's capital, Abuja. This is Daybreak, and as promised, it's time for the paper review where we'll take a look at the front pages of local and international newspapers. And I have joining me in the studio Dr. Constance Ikoko, a Raj News analyst, a social commentator, and a journalist. Good morning, Dr. Ikoko.
Good morning, Adesiwa. How are we today?
Great. Midweek edition. Fantastic. I look forward to it. Yes.
I'm looking forward to Friday. It's half gone. I'm ready to go already.
Okay.
Well, to look at the headlines with us this morning, we have Emmanuel Aziken. He is a columnist with Vanguard newspaper and former political editor. Welcome to the program, Emmanuel.
Thank you very much. Nice
You're in the midst of women this morning. You're blessed.
I'm blessed that you are amongst women. Good morning,
blessed
Emmanuel.
and thou. Okay, we'll begin with this day newspaper. This day, we'll look at the story. Amid sustained inflationary pressures, CBN further raises MPR to 26.75%. This is the first time CBN has increased interest rates since February. CBN governor said, and I quote, "Inflation is having a major impact on the economy. Purchasing power is getting eroded. People are being pushed to different categories of poverty. It's in our interest that we're able to take the scourge of inflation." Well, a potpourri of economic plans and strategies by the government, but they're not exactly succeeding to take down this scourge that CBN Governor Yemisi Cardoso is talking about, Emmanuel.
Well, the increase was largely expected. Economists expected the CBN to raise the benchmark rates. That's the rate has now been raised. The rate has been raised in the last 5 or 6 months by about 700 basis points, and the expectation flowed from the rise in the inflation level, which is unprecedented, more than a decade high. So the CBN efforts, in as much as it was largely expected, the fear now, just as the CBN governor did say, is that it could further worsen the economic situation in the country, because inflation is a monster that must be suppressed. But it is not only the monetary policy tool that you use in bringing down inflation. One would expect the administration on its part to apply fiscal measures to bring down this monster. Mark you, the raise in the CBN monetary policy rate is coming at a time that the federal government is processing an increase in the minimum wage. This is going to largely affect businesses. I wonder for businesses how they are going to take this, because it will increase the cost of doing business in Nigeria. And those who already have borrowed funds, businesses that have borrowed funds, you expect them now to have a higher financing cost.
That's why when you think about it, at this point, it's not certain what to expect. It's just been a roller coaster. It's looking like we might have to just wait this out, because the promises are there that it is going to get better. And we're looking for the short term for it to increase or change dramatically. That's not happening. It's going to be hoping for the best and wishing that the strategies that they are deploying will definitely work in the long term.
Indeed. I mean, at this point, unfortunately, we do have to cling on to is hope, and to ensure that these measures are effective and not just, trial and error. I do agree with Mr. Emmanuel, because it's striking a balance between controlling the inflation, what Americans are calling right now runaway inflation, and supporting economic development. So it's not just about the monetary policies. How about the fiscal? When you talk about government spendings and, prudency and all of that, how do they connect? The monetary policy, on the one hand, is trying to do something, and then the fiscal maybe doing contrary. So we have to strike a balance between that. And I agree, because there are those who say, you recall only very recently, I hate to bring up the name, but he has done it before, he's been there, so he knows. Aliko Dangote did raise the concern that you cannot have lending rates at the bank at almost 30% and expect for jobs to be created or for economy to grow. It doesn't make any sense, because increasing the interest rates automatically leads to higher borrowings for businesses and individuals. When that happens, in a bid to control inflation, you create more inflation. That's because it may not kick in almost immediately. And what really happens? So people borrow at higher rates, production cost is high. Guess who pays for it? The consumers. So it's a vicious circle, and in a bid to stem rising inflation, then you create more inflation. And unfortunately, this is what we are seeing, not just in Nigeria, but we're seeing it around the world. However, what we do to tackle inflation is what will be different. Mr. Yemi Cardoso is right. The reasons he gave to increase the rates, they seem genuine, including recent measures by the government to import certain foods, the inflation we are currently seeing, and other measures and other reasons he mentioned. They seem genuine, but will this be the solution? Can this be the magic wand to stemming the inflation?
So there is the textbook,
yes,
and then there is the practicality.
Reality, yes.
I mean, you don't need a Dangote to talk about all the impact. Manufacturers every day tell us what they are going through. And the other day we were discussing, yesterday we were discussing, no, it wasn't yesterday, but recently we were discussing the Guardian report that said over 30,000 jobs lost due to the shutdown of manufacturing in industries or sectors or businesses in an economy such as this. So the implications are really far-reaching. And like I said, it's a really, really rough road ahead, and we're going to be watching to see whether this changes anytime soon, but I think it's going to be for the long haul. Let's move to the next newspaper, New Telegraph, this morning. In New Telegraph, we'll be looking at the story, Nightclub Comment. Akpabio apologizes to Natasha, advises decorum on social media. So during the plenary last week, Senate President Godswill Akpabio had told Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan that the Senate was not a nightclub. This was when she rose to give a contribution, or to make a contribution. Now Akpabio has apologized, saying, and I quote, "I will not intentionally denigrate any woman, and I always pray that God will lift women. I want to apologize to you. The interest shown in the social media shows we have enemies. I felt I should tender a public apology." Please laugh. Yeah, it's funny, but it's not funny. I mean, this shows the power of social media. He received unprecedented backlash after he made that comment on the floor of the Senate. And Nigerians were not having it at all. If there was no social media, I bet he might have gotten away with this, Emmanuel.
Well, the apology from the Senate President is really welcome. One must appreciate him for eating his words, as it were. And but mark you, that apology flowed from a history of incidents, negative incidents Senator Akpabio has had with women. You remember the issue with the former NDDC MD, Joy Nuina?
Yes.
You remember the issue with Senator Ireti Kingibe, which was very, very surprising, because the Senate President, at a function of the executive branch, opening I think July 2nd, opening flagging of the construction of the Abuja bus terminal, through Senator Kingibe under the bus, at the bus terminal, threw her under the bus.
No pun intended.
You could imagine telling the crowd that Minister Wike should disregard comments from Senator Kingibe.
So the Senate President is known for gaffes.
Yes, he's known for gaffes. He's known for gaffes. So, but coming back yesterday to apologize to Senator Natasha, I think one must appreciate him, but I think he should go the full hog. He should also apologize to Senator Ireti Kingibe, whom he publicly put down.
Talking about going the full hog, he has to be careful that this does not occur again and again. Outside of the Senate chambers, there are several events that he had said things that were unbecoming, and people sort of cringed a little bit, and offhanded comments in the workplace, especially in the National Assembly, in the place where you have so-called highly placed personalities. It is something that one has to watch at this one.
Indeed, we need to foster a culture of respect for women in Nigeria, whoever she is and wherever she may be. And we need to see uncommon leadership from, Senator Akpabio. Yes. Because really, like you said, Senator Akpabio is the president of the Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. He's the number 3 citizen of this country. So whatever he does, whatever he says, is significant, whether he likes it or not. People are reading him. People are watching him. So it is very important that Senator Akpabio carries himself and the office in which he holds in high esteem, because again, he's a role model to a lot of people he might not even know. And I like something that he said yesterday, that it does show, I don't know about the haters he was talking about, that they have haters, yes, but I do know
that's another gaffe. You don't need to say that. I
do know that, when he says that the response to what happened on the floor of the chamber shows that Nigerians are interested in what the Senate does. He's right, because Nigerians are paying more attention beyond what the president will do or the governors. The National Assembly is also an important part of our political fabric, so we must pay attention. Whatever they do will be scrutinized. We commend him for apologizing. It could have come earlier. Yeah. I mean, his phone didn't need to crash. His lovely wife didn't need to receive over 2,000, 3,000 calls like he said, but it is good that he acknowledges that he has made a mistake, whether intentional or not. He says he was taken out of context. I think we would accept that.
It wasn't out of context. I watched it. Well, and the interesting thing is that he says there should be decorum in social media. Who needs to have a decorum, Emmanuel?
Well, I think the decorum in the social media will come if the political actors are decorous themselves. And what he did say was largely surprising, because of the records, he's known to be a friend of the Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan family. So it shows there's a tendency for the Senate president to lose his bearing sometimes. That's how he communicated Christmas messages to senators on the during
to their inbox.
to their inboxes.
Prayer to their inbox.
Prayers to their inboxes. Yes. Which was a number of senators. How much was it? It was just from what one, that was just 2 million naira.
Just well, in this economy, it's not just.
Well, senators, that's chicken change for senators.
For them,
for a year. So he needs to hold himself. He's a very livable man. He's a man who is full of passion. But I think he should put more decorum. He should put more statesmanship while he sits in the chambers, and even while he's outside, when he makes comments. Because I still make reference to the issue he mentioned about Senator Ireti Kingibe. You don't throw your colleague under the bus like that. It's never happened. Senators disagree with him, but they come outside. They show some level of unanimity. Please, a minute. I throw you back to Senator. I refer back to Senator the time of Malam El-Rufai, while he was while he was being screened. There were allegations he made against senators. Many senators knew it to be true, but as it were, they rallied themselves. They didn't impugn, or they did not bring down the dignity of the Senate on account of what many perceived to be the truth said by Malam El-Rufai.
Finally on this topic at this one, both of us are women. Do you think it's been blown out of proportion, like some have said?
No, I don't think it was blown out of proportion again, and I think that's why I said that the apology should have come sooner. Perhaps Senator Akpabio did not realize the enormity of what he said. That it took, the entire weekend for a blog to release his private phone numbers, all manner of stories. He had to debunk that he has only one wife and he loves her very much. It took all of that for him to realize that he had erred, and then he had goofed and he had to apologize. But I don't think it was taken out of proportion at all. And, it will also be a perfect time to call on the likes of Senator Akpabio with, the weight he carries, to be an ally for the women. We do not even have enough. I don't even think we've started with women representative in our politics, particularly in the National Assembly, starting with the Senate. So the few that we have, we would like to see that a person like Senator Akpabio is an ally for the women and ensure that more women are even able to have their say in political matters, despite the few numbers we have, rather than being on the opposite side.
And such offhanded comments can be misconstrued as misogyny.
Yeah.
And that's why, you know, one has to be careful there. And to the point about women representatives, politically, there are very few women in governance. And it's a lonely journey to work as a female politician in these circles. So you do want to see that you have some kind of support or even extra support from the men, because it's the men that will make the change that allows women to be stronger in the political field. So there's a lot of work to be done in that regard, talking about women representation. Now we've had enough on that. Let's move on to the next topic. We'll be looking at Guardian newspaper. In the Guardian, Senate passes Police Act bill, extends IGP's tenure to 2027. This bill amends the Police Act of 2020. The bill was sent by President Bola Tinubu proposing changes to the tenure of the IGP. And the IGP, Kayode Egbotoku, was appointed June 2023 for 4 years. He's expected to retire at the age of 60 in September 2024 in compliance with the Police Act 2020. But this is the snag. The law also says that notwithstanding the provisions of subsection 8, any person appointed to the office of IGP shall remain in office until the end of the term stipulated in the letter of appointment. So this is where eyebrows are being raised. Some are calling it an extension because he's supposed to retire at the age of 60. Then the other section says he can remain in office. So different thoughts on this. What do you think, Emmanuel?
You know, when the public hearing on this bill was held last June, there are a number of issues that were, stakeholders raised a number of red flags as pertaining to the tenure extension and the fact that for the general public service, the retirement age is supposed to be 60. Now, making an exception for the police, people are finding it that this could be a personal effort, in as much as one may, irrespective of the performance of the present IG. So a number of stakeholders feel that this is directed at him and that it violates the spirit of the public service tenure. And other people are now saying that the military could also start canvassing, and this will also limit growth. The career progression of a number of officers in the middle rank could also be limited. So that is the issue that has now been brought to the fore by this amendment. And since it came from the president, so it has the bearings as the president has his personal touch on this.
Yeah, so some people are already connecting it to 2027, and also the fact that the bill passed so rapidly in the Senate and the House of Reps. No much debate about it, and you know there are insinuations that the president is getting his way in the National Assembly. Your thoughts on that, Adesua?
So it's not just the police bill. We've seen a couple of bills pass rapidly, whether it's the minimum wage or whether it's the
but that one was special, minimum wage.
National anthem.
Yeah, or the national anthem. So it's not just the police. A couple of bills. It depends on, and it's the prerogative of the lawmakers who are debating it, and you know what attention they want to give to it. And I also think that also segues into the appointment and retention of the IGP, which is also the prerogative of the Commander-in-Chief himself, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Emmanuel has raised the questions and, of course, also the concerns of some sector or segments of the society, to include what does this really say about career growth for others? How does it impact those coming behind Mr. Kayode Egbotoku? To what extent? What are the motives behind it? Will it ensure police effectiveness? Is this to allow the IGP carry out a successful tenure in 4 years of, you know, bursting and seeing to full term his policies and programs for the police under his watch? These are questions that we need to really look into and ask, are they valid So what will extension of his tenure really do? Anything you do really in Nigeria as a sitting government, whether you like it or not, will be tied to your next election term. So that's not new, that you're saying this is about 2027.
Well, you see, this topic needs to be further investigated or debated or discussed, maybe by lawyers, because if the law says that the age of retirement is 60, that's, the civil service rule, that the age of retirement is 60, it means there are reasons why that is the case. And like you said, people should be moving up in the system and be exiting for other people to come forward or to have their own opportunity. So if at the end of the day, the law is conflicting in the sense that all of a sudden you don't have to retire at the age of 60, there's something not quite right there that needs to be fixed. Again, testing the law, Emmanuel.
Well, I do not know if the retirement age is explicit in the Constitution. If it is not...
Well, in this act, it says you have to retire at the age of 60, yes.
Is it in the Constitution or in the Police Act?
Police
It's
Act.
in the Police
So that
Act.
is the Police Act. So what they have done now is an amendment of the Police Act. So it gives legal cover to whatsoever aspiration the president or whosoever has as concerning the career of those he has appointed. So I think it's, in as much as it has been passed by the Senate and the House of Representatives, it is legal once it gets the assent of the president.
Right. So let's look at Daily Trust this morning. In Daily Trust, there's a story on shelf protest, Tinubu begs Nigerians. Violent protests, ill-advised, according to the IGP. Citizens have constitutional right to complain, says article. I mean, we've all seen the press conference by the Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mohammed Idris, where he told Nigerians that President Tinubu would really like the organizers to call off this protest. Why? Because he says the president is already addressing all the concerns that have been raised concerning the economy, security, and other issues that we're being faced with at this moment. But is that a genuine call? I mean, should he be calling for the protest to be off or to be shelved, Emmanuel?
Well, it's a little bit ironic. You remember Senator Shehu Sani did tell us some few weeks ago that Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu was the financier, was a sponsor, was the mentor in most of the protests that were organized prior to democratic rule and even after the advent of the Fourth Republic. So it is ironic that our sponsor is now the one working against genuine expression of the feelings of the people. Mark you, the Constitution, I think Section 40, provides that there should be every citizen of the country shall have the right to assembly or to protest or to express his or her opinion. So I'm particularly worried by the frenzy, the paranoia it will seem that the administration and administration officials and enablers are bringing to stop this protest. Because if you remember in 2012, when Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu and a number of other opposition leaders marched to the streets, the indices we have today were far worse than at that time. We know what we could buy a bag of rice for about 7,000 naira at that time. Now it goes for about 80,000. And a crate of egg at that time was about 400 naira. Now it's if you get it 5,000 naira, you thank your God. So I think the protest is an opportunity for the people to express their opinions. And when I see administration officials coming out to say President Tinubu said it, President Tinubu is not, let him come out and engage with the people. And mark you, we've gone almost 1 year, more than 1 year. He's been in office. We've not seen him engaging personally with the Nigerian people. Not to the media, not to the press. We need Asiwaju to come out. When he comes out, talks to us, talk to the people, talk to the Nigerian, talk to the citizenry on his own, you understand? Not administration of the minister is saying Tinubu is saying this. Let us hear Tinubu say something. Let us hear him speak to the people one-on-one, or speak to the media, engage the media. People say that President Buhari was head back, but he had press conferences, he had press briefings, he had media chats at the time he started.
He did.
But we've not seen President Tinubu do that. We want to see him engage with the citizenry.
Right.
People will believe him more.
You know, there are reports that are saying that there's an emergency meeting today. The Secretary to the State Government will be there. The ministers will be there as well. And you have to wonder, it looks like they're, and that's relating to this planned protest, they're really jittery about it. What is there to be jittery about a protest that is supposed to allow people to express their displeasure about what is going on in the country?
No government in the world, wherever in the world, likes mayhem and chaos. But I think that the president, according to the minister, is not saying Nigerians don't have the right to protest. And I think that some government officials, including the president and the Inspector General of Police, are saying the right things. For instance, the president is saying, give me time. I am addressing your grievances. I am aware of them. But I do agree with Emmanuel that unlike President Buhari, which we saw most of his years leading by proxy, the president said, it would be nice for the president to engage with the Nigerian people. So it would be nice to hear from him directly. I do not have information of a national broadcast at this time. I do not know the plan for an emergency meeting at this time, but as soon as I get that information, I would let you know.
Oh yeah, you cover the State House.
Yes,
so
I do.
You are a right-hand woman there.
I do cover the State House. So the president has said, give me time. I know your grievances. I am addressing them. The Inspector General, on the other hand, is saying the Constitution does give you the right to protest, but do not let it degenerate into chaos and violence, which is the right thing. So it's good to hear that these government officials, including the president, is saying you do have the right to protest for or against the government, and the Constitution covers that. You have the right to protest for or against the government. But as we do know, protests are usually hijacked, and then they degenerate into violence and mayhem. We do not want what happened to Kenya happen to us. No, even if you hate the president as an individual, when you look at the pictures coming out from Kenya, I don't think that it is wise for anybody to go that route. But it is okay, it is all right, it is allowed to go on protest. But what are your demands? You know, how applicable are these demands? You know, how valid are they? Can they be long-term, short-term, immediate? Are there any quick, demands that the government can meet? Because I look at some of these lists, Dr. Ikoku, and I'm seeing jettison the 1999 Constitution, reverse petrol to 100 naira, and I'm wondering, can this really be done? How applicable are these demands?
It doesn't matter. People still have to express whatever views they have. That's why you have a government. You're there to listen to the people, to serve the people, and that's what it is in a democracy. And we have to also think about what is so difficult in having a monthly discussion, a monthly chat with the people. Every month, maybe once or twice.
Or quarterly. We saw that with President Obasanjo with the TV, with the media chat, where he spoke to Nigerians through a media chat. We haven't seen much of that since the era of President Olusegun Obasanjo, really.
It's something that should be done, or we should push for. I think it's necessary for a government in so-called democracy, where people want to see that the president is engaging with the citizens. And it's a demand that should be listened to. It's a demand that I think should be accepted, and it should occur in this kind of a system and setting. So let's see whether anything changes. I hope his handlers are listening to this and that they are hearing what Nigerians are saying.
Fingers crossed. Well, let's take a quick break. When we return, we'll look at more front pages for you. Stay with us. It's 7:33 a.m. West African time. This is Daybreak. Thanks for staying with us. We're still reviewing top newspapers from around the world. Dr. Constance Ikoku and Mr. Emmanuel are still with me here in the studio. Welcome back, guys.
Thank you, Adeswa. We'll look at the Punch newspaper now. The federal government votes 2 trillion naira for Lagos, Calabar, and others. So there are also funds in this for Port Harcourt to Maiduguri Railway. which is at a sum of 530 billion naira. There's Badagry to Tinkan Port, Lekki Port, Ijebu-Ode, and Kajola. There's also Africa Trans-Sahara Highway that will go through Benue, Kogi, Nasarawa, and Abuja. A lot of projects in this bill, quite a number of projects with huge sums also voted for them. But implementation is key, Emmanuel.
Well, it's salutary that the administration is putting a legal cover to the projects that are being embarked across the country. And specifically, the Lagos-Calabar Rail Project has a vote of, I think, about 600 billion naira. And that will tell you that before the commencement of construction, that there was no legal cover. That money was not provided. So where did they get that money from? So these are issues that worry stakeholders, constitutional stakeholders. How did the federal government commence a project without appropriate financing? That's a question that needed to be answered. And for me, I have said it before, I think here, that the priority we are giving to this Lagos-Calabar highway project, it does not, I don't think it deserves it, because there are more other essential needs in the polity. Imagine if we were to use 600 billion naira to put more boots on the ground in Zamfara, in the northwest. We will squeeze out the insurgents there. So I think, well, in as much as the government is doing the right thing, following the path of constitutional order, but it's the priority that I beg to differ.
Talking about legal cover, it also raises the issue of oversight.
Yeah.
We have a National Assembly who is supposed to be independent, and they're supposed to, definitely look at what the executive is doing, provide that oversight, ask questions where necessary, intervene or stop certain actions that the executive is taking, which is not in the interest of the people. But like Professor Patu Tommy said yesterday, it looks like we have a rubber stamp National Assembly now, Adesuwa.
I can't recall the last time we didn't have a rubber stamp National Assembly. It seems to be a toga that goes with the National Assembly when you have majority of members from the ruling party, whether they like it or not. Their party is in power, and so they are usually, dangling towards.
It's only been during the APC, during the PDP time. Oh my God, it wasn't a rubber stamp at all.
Was it really?
It wasn't.
Maybe the Saraki, maybe the Bukala Saraki period. But other than that, when the majority is in power, it's a toga that goes with it, because you do not see a legislative that antagonizes the executive, where you have the same party in power. But beyond that, this is a fresh injection into the 2024 budget, which the president had requested. And I like the question you have raised about oversight of the lawmakers, because that's an issue we usually have. So we do not have enough funding, and then when we eventually get this money is appropriated, you have issue of it's one thing to appropriate, it's another thing to release funds. So when these funds are eventually released, how are they spent? Do they really go into the projects that they are meant to be spent on? And that's where the oversight function of the lawmakers come in, which we have to query. How come we spend these huge sums of money? Mr. Emmanuel was talking about pushing more money into the military. If you look at the budgets in recent history, we've seen an increase in our military spending. But does that equate to reality on ground? Are we seeing, is it commiserate to our reality? So that's the question there. If we do appropriate this money,
we're having a supplementary budget.
Exactly. So if we do appropriate this money and they're released, we must ensure that they are spent on the projects they are meant to, and not siphoned.
Emmanuel,
you want to say something about rubber stamp?
I want to say something about rubber stamp. A senator called me, who spoke on the phone just last week. He said they don't call after the Ndume affair, because I expressed my shock that the senators sat down there and the National Party wrote a letter asking you to remove your chief whip. And nobody raised an issue. it was enclosed door. A senator told me that, you know, that they don't call themselves rubber stamp anymore. That the new word they call themselves within closed door is Aradites, that are gummed to the executive branch. Anything the executive branch brings, they do. You've not seen them differ. I'm telling you, when Obasanjo wanted to build the National Stadium, the Anyim Senate rose up against it. I think the appropriation then was about 70 billion naira. So the issue of we have moved from rubber stamp to Aradites now.
And you know, the word is not even antagonism. It's not about antagonism between the different arms of government. It's just a healthy debate. Yes, there has to be a healthy debate between these arms because there has to be checks and balances.
When did we really see that?
A very long time ago.
Exactly my point. We haven't seen that in a while.
Yeah, which is sad.
It is sad.
It shouldn't be so. Well, let's go to the international headlines for you this morning. We'll be looking at daily graphic from Ghana. The president inaugurates 320 housing units for police. That's President Nana Akufo-Addo. He was doing that when you see the images there. He was with the Minister for Interior and then the Minister for Works and Housing in Ghana. You also have him cutting that ribbon there to open the housing project and photos of what those houses for the police force in Ghana look like. It's like a block of flats. And immediately this connects to Nigeria. You know, the police force has an important job in the society as it relates to law enforcement, public safety, crime prevention, and emergency response. It means that the welfare of the police is key to achieving their responsibilities, especially with basic housing. Here in Nigeria, the police force struggles with basic, decent housing. If you see images of police barracks in Nigeria, it's terrible. And that shouldn't be the case. It's a discussion now that we have an extension of tenure for IGP Egbetoku. Maybe this is something that needs to be raised at the National Assembly. The whole face of police barracks in Nigeria need to change, Emmanuel.
Well, if you look at the pictures of the new police quarters that were commissioned by the Ghanaian president, they look very beautiful, very enchanting. They look like where one would want to live. You understand?
Look at that. This is Nigeria.
This is not Nigeria.
This is Nigeria.
If you could have brought up the pictures of the new police quarters commissioned in Ghana, you will see them very alluring, beautiful places. Compared to this, I believe this is like Obalande.
This is Ikoyi.
Yes. Ikoyi. So what we have here, it shows us the rot we have in the Nigerian system.
How does a human being live here?
Yeah, and where you live helps influences your psyche. And that is what we see with many of our police officers. And one would urge the Nigerian establishment to take heed. But meanwhile, I have personal issues with providing accommodation for police. I think the police should live amongst ourselves. They should live in the community. When they live in the community, then they are able to have a sense of community participation, and that translates in their bearing, in their outlook in work. Not you live somewhere, you go somewhere else to make all sorts of illegal or commit all sorts of illegal activities. So I personally believe the police should live amongst us.
And so there are also a couple of questions that we can raise here. Is it that these monies are voted for building and maintenance and they are not used, or is it that they don't have sufficient funds? When you compare police barracks to, say, military barracks or Navy barracks, it's like light and day, Adesua.
Yes, it is. You know, I've had personal discussions with friends and colleagues, and I would always say, I don't think we've been fair to the Nigeria police force, because when you look at the stark difference, whether it's the Navy quarters, the Army quarters, and then the police barracks, there is always a stark difference. And you wonder why. Is it I don't understand. Is it how much we have relegated the police force, or is it the habits of those who live in the barracks? I really don't get it. But you cannot dissociate the Nigeria police force from the realities of Nigeria as a country. So it's part of it. You cannot expect top performance for any individual who lives in a situation like this. It is just impossible, like Mr. Emmanuel has stated this morning. We expect so much from them, but we give them so little. What's that saying? To whom much is given, much is expected. I think by the time we begin to change, first, the outlook of the Nigeria police force, including where they stay and where they look. And I think we will try to do that with their uniforms, about their appearance. But how about we deal with, where they stay? Let's change the psychic of those, who are protecting us daily, or who are supposed to protect us daily, because they are supposed to, there's a debate about if they're doing a good job at that, but they're supposed to protect us daily. They should, be the first responders to breakdown of law and order. And that's why we have seen we have so militarized our society, because the police cannot just, perform. They cannot step up to the plate. And we can see why. And we haven't done enough for them.
Emmanuel, when you look around, we all live in Abuja, right? And I don't know if you go out at night. When I close late at night, and when you're going home, there's several checkpoints. Sometimes it's police, sometimes it's the military. And they're often very jovial. They'll crack a joke, they'll call
ask you about your day.
Exactly. And these people stay there till morning to protect us. It's not an easy job at all. And at what cost to their lives, and what kind of packages do they have for welfare, for wages, and all of that. It's really a sad situation. And again, Botoku has gotten his tenure extended. They have the Police Service Commission. What do they even do, Emmanuel? The Police Service Commission? The
Police Service Commission is supposed to
regulate.
Oh, okay.
Regulate,
that's only for appointment.
Yes, that's what that job is, to regulate and monitor the senior cadre of the police. And
so the police has to fight for themselves here.
They have to fight. No, they have to fight. I agree with Adesua. We've not been very fair to the police, and that is when I talk about the priority. We're voting 600 billion naira for a project that we don't know when it's going to be completed. I talk about the Calabar-Lagos highway. If you could put that kind of money to put more put more boots on the ground, enlist more policemen. A previous administration started the process of recruiting 10,000 policemen, but that was jettisoned. So I think we need more men, more jovial men. Like more more jovial, happier policemen. Yes. We need more of them. Anytime I meet a policeman who is jovial, I feel happy. But you are happy to be meeting a lot of the jovial ones. A number of others meet very hostile persons.
Maybe in Abuja they are nice because they don't know who they are speaking to. Probably outside Abuja, it's what? Yes. Well, maybe
we need to empower the police more.
We are privileged in Abuja. Well, let's go to the Washington Post. Here we'll be looking at the story. U.S. Secret Service Director Kimberly Chittle resigns in the aftermath of Trump rally shooting. Chittle had called the assassination attempt on Trump a security failure and unacceptable. She said, and I quote, "The buck stops with me." This occurred at a congressional hearing on Capitol Hill. She faced a barrage of questions from Republicans and Democrats during a feisty hearing. You see that statement, "The buck stops with me." That's taking responsibility, Emmanuel.
Well, one must commend her. First of all, you must see that in an unusual incident, the Republicans and the Democrats came together on one issue. So there was a bipartisan consensus.
It was about the country.
About the country. About the country. And that shows the kind of patriotism that flowed in the blood of Americans in this particular incident. And her taking responsibility, it shows that is what we want every public officer to do, anywhere you are, and which we don't see in our country. You remember in Nigeria, policemen, a number of well-trained policemen who had been apprehending kidnappers were killed in Taraba till today. Nobody took responsibility for that. Nobody was sanctioned for that. Things happen in Nigeria. you know, and nobody takes responsibility. So this is a worthy demonstration of a public service. You know, she's retiring. Her career this may look like blighted, but in the eyes of in the consideration of many others, she went out and she went out well.
When you also watched the hearing, it was really a very tough one for her. Initially, she didn't want to resign. She seemed aloof, numb at times, but the questions, the fire came, you know, the heat was on her, and that showed the oversight function of the legislature. You don't allow public officials to take a walk when something is wrong, Adesoa.
Indeed. I mean, after watching a clip of this hearing, you know, and they did tell her to her face, you know, that they were going to call for her resignation because they did not think that she was up to the task. This was a serious, huge security lapse under her watch, and she wasn't providing the answers. She looked ill-equipped. Most times she didn't have the answers to their questions, and so they had already made up their mind to ask for her resignation. So later in the day, when she tendered her resignation, that didn't come as a surprise to a lot of people. But you're right, apart from taking responsibility, you could see the unison in the committee hearing, because this was beyond Chettle herself. It was beyond the FBI. It was even beyond Donald Trump. This was a national call to say a former president was giving a speech at a rally and his life was at stake. His life was at stake because he was open to negligence. This is what they describe as something they haven't seen in decades. This security breach hasn't been seen in decades in America. So, I mean, the gavel came down hard. It came down hard on Chettle, and I think you say she went out in style, but she will always be remembered as that FBI director whose, you know, under whose tenure that Donald Trump, you know, took a hit to his ear during a campaign ahead of the elections in 2024. So I don't know if she went out, you know, with her head up high.
In a blaze of glory.
Yes, but, you know, she did go out, and we can learn a lot from that. Take responsibility as public officials. We must see beyond our noses of religion and region. And I think that is what, you know, the biggest lesson we must take from this, I personally think we can take from this. Politicians must see our nation beyond their region and religion. It's not always about you all the time.
Another lesson,
put the country first.
We need to normalize resignations. There's nothing wrong in resigning and walking away from the job. If we normalize resignations, then people that are not up to the job, that got to the job in the manner, you know, through which they were not qualified, they didn't have the character, competence for the position, you know, then we can kick them out, or they can be kicked out when these failures or lapses arise. You know, that's something that needs to be done. Let's look at the Times this morning. The Times UK. Long-term sick should be forced to seek work. So the new government of Keir Starmer is trying to increase the number of people in active workforce in the UK, as opposed to dependency. A record 2.8 million people are off work because of long-term sickness. They are part of the 9.4 million people neither in employment nor seeking for a job. With the cost of sickness benefits reaching a whopping 64 billion pounds by the end of the year, the Parliament says this is spiraling out of control. I mean, it's part of the downsides of a welfare system that, you know, so let's remove sickness. You know, there are people that, yes, they are sick, they have to seek for welfare. But there are also people that are energetic, they are strong, they are young, well enough to seek for employment. And in a welfare system where you can get away with just collecting money from the government at the end of the month, it becomes a problem. And that's one of the issues that is weighing down the national healthcare in the UK. And Sir Kema is saying we need to change this, Emmanuel.
Well, it's welcoming that the Prime Minister is taking this measure, a Labour Prime Minister for that matter, who got most of his support from the left or center. And whatever it is a good decision. And it reminds me of somebody like Prime Minister Tony Blair, who went out in his way towards boosting the British economy, cutting down privileges and welfare entitlements that otherwise had, that were at that time going to the that was going to many of those who were claiming sick or whatsoever. So I think it's a good decision. It will help to boost the British economy, and it will because the more hands you have on the job, it will boost, energize the economy.
I mean, they're also trying to cut costs.
Exactly, because it will also reduce dependency on, the states. The state having to take care of, the people. But there are those who have raised concerns about forcing those with, genuine long-term debilitations, to then go and seek work. So how exactly would this work? How do you strike the balance?
I guess the issue is that cases have to be reviewed again
periodically
to make sure that people, are to the extreme that they cannot work at all before they can receive that benefit or welfare from the state. If at all you can work it, even if it's a couple of times a week, in a couple of hours, then take that job and some income, and so the burden on the state would be less, as opposed to you're not doing anything at all. And also because the population is increasing, they have a lot of migration. This is heavy on the budget of the government. So these are all the issues they're thinking about and how to overhaul that system.
No free lunch.
No free lunch. No free lunch for everybody.
No free lunch anymore. Well, I think that's the much we can take today on Daybreak, the midweek edition. Thank you so much, Dr. Constance Ikoku, for always being here. And we do thank you, our guest analyst for today, Mr. Emmanuel, for also showing up bright and early. Thank you to the viewers for watching. Up next, we'll have the morning show. Have a great day. Bye.